Welcome to the Texas Talks podcast. I am your host, Brad Swail. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Tom Butler, Vice Chair of the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, or TDLR. Mr. Butler was appointed to the TDLR in 2013 and serves as the president of UCI Federal Credit Union and chairman of TF Butler and Company. Mr. Butler, how are you?
Doing just great, Brad. How are you doing today?
Doing real good. I appreciate you coming on the show and speaking with me. I'm excited to talk to you. I think we're going to be talking about energy and regulations around energy and how to bolster all of that. But before we jump into that, I give a real brief introduction. I think you've been on the, I know, I said it. You've been on the TDLR since 2013. You were appointed by Governor Abbott. How'd you end up there?
Yeah, that's I'm a true Texan, so I can make a long story out of a short question. So please stop me, Brad. I'm kind of like the Energizer Bunny. You just kind of put me in a direction I'm going to go. So the way I got there is kind of a long, convoluted story. I used to work for Harris County Adult Probation, and in 1995, September 1st, 1995, it was really kind of coming up on our anniversary there, or I guess we've just passed it. The state of Texas created the Sex Offender Registration Registry. Okay. Prior to that date, we had no way of tracking and identifying sex offenders. So if a child went missing or something bad happened to a child, we had to pull on the memories of detectives in that area or police officers in a particular area to say, have you had any instances of a bad guy doing something? In September 1st, 1995, we started a database for sex offenders in the state of Texas. And I was working in the 184th District Court in Harris County, Harris County being the biggest county in Texas at that time and still today, I believe. And the judge said, we have to start doing something on September 1st. Would you please look into it? Let me know what it is. So I looked into it and realized this is a very complicated registration program that the state had passed, and no one had really become aware of it or done anything with it. So I contacted DPS and asked for some information because they were charged with creating this registry of sex offenders. And I was put in contact with a criminologist by the name of Paul Jordan, a great guy, wonderful criminologist, had a passion for what he was doing, and we hit it off because I did too. And so he and I created this program in this policies and procedures in Harris County for the tracking and registration of sex offenders. So what would happen is somebody would get a probation for a sex offense of some sort. And then I had to send a piece of mail to the locality in which they lived, saying this person will come within the next 14 days and register. You have to send me back a piece of information, a piece of mail, letting me know that he did register, and that completed the loop.
Yeah.
Once that loop was completed, we sent it off to DPS. And so once that went to DPS, they were entered into the registry. That was just a behind the scenes database at that time. Now that has morphed into you being able to go onto a website now and looking and see if there's a sex offender living in your neighborhood. So that was the genesis of how I ended up at the TDLR. Well, that's a big stretch, right? So Senator Barbara Shapiro forwarded my name to the governor's office at that time. They were trying to field a commission called the Texas Sex Offender Texas, it escapes me for one second, the treatment program.
Yeah.
But I was not the treatment guy. I was the help catch them guy. And I said, no, that's not really something for me. That's more of a counselor type position, not something that you would want me on.
Yeah.
And I was going to school this whole time, right? I started off life as a construction worker. It took me 6 years to get my 2-year degree because I was working as an electrician in the refineries here in the Ship Channel area. Going to school at night, and it took me another 6 years to get my associate's degree. So I finally got my business degree and said, if you ever have anything business related, I'd be happy to take a look at a position. And so a couple of years went by, and they'd offered several positions in the meantime. They were always kind of computer related or something like that. And I hated computers, even though one of my degrees is in computers. They just said, "Oh, that's where the money's going to be made." And I was a young man going, "Oh, well, I like money." And
Sure.
so, but my passion and love was accounting, believe it or not. And it's strange, I know. But I would order like annual reports on companies, and I had a stack of them on at bedside, and that's what I would read before I'd go to sleep at night because I wanted to understand how companies worked, what policies and procedures kind of made them who they were, and why are good companies good and why are bad companies bad. And so there's a wealth of information on strategies and things that are implemented and things that go well, and the competitive analysis that management puts out in annual reports. And um, so they came to me and said, "How about the Texas Credit Union Commission?"
Yeah.
And I said, "That would be perfect. I don't know anything about them, but they're like banks, and I would love to do that." And so in 2005, I was appointed to the Texas Credit Union Commission by Governor Perry. The next year, I was made vice chairman. I don't like to be the guy that knows the least. You know,
Sure.
when you walk in, there's that old saying: if you walk into a poker table and sit down and you haven't spotted the sucker in the first 10 seconds, you're it. And that's always scared the heck out of me. I've never wanted to be the sucker.
Sure.
So I dove in
Yeah.
and I learned the rules and regs for credit unions. I interviewed credit union presidents to say what works, what doesn't work. And then they made me chairman. And so we took the Texas Credit Union Commission out from under the legislature and made it semi-directed, semi-independent SDSI status. So they don't go to the legislature every 2 years for funding. So I did a good, decent job there. And
Yeah.
then when it was time for me to get out or my term ended, they asked me if I wanted to stay. And I said, "Nah, I think I've done everything I need to do here." We did some great work there, and we can get into that if you like. But and they said, "Well, you've done a good job. We'd like to put you on this TDLR." And so I said, "Never heard about it. Be interested." And I think at that time we probably had 350,000, close to 400,000 licensees. And at that time, we probably had about 28 different programs. Um, and now we're up to over 1 million licensees and 38 different programs
Yeah.
that we manage. And so that's a long answer. I'm sorry, Brad.
That's
That's a
okay.
long answer to your question. How did I end up on the TDLR? And again, I was made vice chairman soon thereafter, and I've been there ever since.
Well, no, it's good to get some background about who you are and sort of why you're the person to talk to about this sort of stuff. So, you have a wide-ranging background of experiences and, serving on different commissions. So that's perfect. I appreciate you, giving that detail. But you're here to talk to us today. And I mean, you worked as an electrician, right? In refineries there. So you've got some personal experience, some hands-on experience. So I guess, tell me about energy in Texas and so sort of where we're at. It's a good place to start, just real briefly.
Sure. So energy in Texas, great question, and where we're at. So we're thriving, right? We're doing extremely well. And the interesting thing is, I've never gotten away from it, and part of that is just kind of where I live. I live grew up in LaPorte and Deer Park. It's one of those kind of they're communities that are neighbors. They have a huge football rivalry, but there isn't really much difference between the two communities. They're both hardworking, honest people that just trying to raise their families, and so going to work in the refineries right off the bat was really kind of a wonderful experience because I got to know my neighbors on a different level. Right, the guys in the refineries were always my baseball coach growing up, or my football coaches growing up. They were kind of the pillars of the community, and so they were the guys that would always pitch in when something needed to be done.
Yeah.
Right, whether it was mowing a baseball field or decorating floats for a local parade or something. And so I got to see them from a different perspective when I went to work in the refineries and got to see how they made their living. I came of age in a time where the environmental concerns started to be a bigger deal. And I look back to we were building a power bank one time, which is just a building full of batteries in case the electricity went out. And I remember one time a battery was dropped and some acid spilled out of the battery. And the regulations at that time that we had to go through for a simple battery drop, it was cleaned up quickly. We put some cat litter down, it absorbed it. swept it up. But then safety and environmental came in, and they said, "Hold on, we've got to cordon off this whole area." And we're like, "It's already been picked up."
Yeah.
The emergency was avoided, but they had to cordon off the whole area. They had to write it up. We had environmental guys out there doing an investigation. We had safety guys out there doing an investigation for something that you and I would have cleaned up in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It took all of this manpower to come out there and voluminous amounts of reports, and inspections, and you would think that this was a homicide investigation. uh, you know
Yeah.
the way there were so many people associated with one simple battery drop. So I've seen it work well, and then I've seen kind of the folly of too much regulation and the problems that it can cause. So I think that's probably a good answer to your question.
Sure.
I guess your question was bigger than that. Where are we in Texas? Texas is leading the path to energy independence for this country. We're doing a great job. I can tell you, because I am involved in so many different things. I received a call yesterday from a gentleman who's actually exploring in Mexico. Mexico has pushed so much of the exploration out, and now their natural gas supplies are dwindling.
Yeah.
So they're now welcoming Texans back in to say, please help us. And so this particular gentleman's got a a 200,000 acre property that he's looking at in coordination with the Mexican government to start drilling for natural gas because they're hurting so badly.
Yeah.
So if it weren't for Texas, Mexico would be in even worse shape than they are.
Yeah.
They import a lot of natural gas from Texas. That's going to continue because their economy is in such dire straits. So Texas is doing well. I want to make sure that it continues to do well, and not just because companies do well, but the impact that it has in my community. As I mentioned earlier, those little league coaches that did so much in my community, they're still doing a lot in my community, but they have to have good jobs and good benefits to be able to do that. So it's
Yeah.
a balance. It's a balance between the guy on the ground who does the hard work and the companies that make money to support our communities.
So what is, yeah, I mean, it's, obviously Texas is energy. We have our own grid. And so that's always a big, selling point. And, all the natural resources we have, natural gas, oil, the railroad commission, all the jobs that it creates, all of the, school funding that we get from our energy production. What is TDLR's role in supporting that?
Sure. So our job is to make sure that we have a good and ready workforce.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things that we've done at TDLR recently, and 38 different license programs, over 1 million licensees in the state of Texas, and we do that with 500 full-time employees. Right. Now we've taken on over the summer another 300 employees through the Texas lottery that the legislature gave us. Now that's a mess, and that's going to take some time to pull apart and put back together. But we do our agency in the DNA of our employees and the DNA of our policies and procedures, and then the way we approach problems is such that the legislature gives us more and more of these problem agencies every couple of years.
Yeah.
And so we've grown from 350 when I started to over 1 million, like I said now. And so even the Veterinarians Board, Brad, I don't know if you're aware that the legislature gave us the Veterinarians Board 2 years ago. And so what we've done is we've righted that ship. They've learned how to run a successful agency with good policies, good procedures, and now we will spin them off in another couple of years, and they will become a standalone independent agency again if the legislature desires, and I think they do. And so, so the TDLR's job is to make sure that we have a ready and educated workforce. I can tell you, I've been on it at 13 years now, but at the 12-year mark, a year ago, I had a conversation with our local community college here. I'm also on the foundation board to raise scholarships for our local community college because I was a beneficiary of our community college. I didn't go through the scholarship program. I paid my own way, but one of it's a pilot program that I implemented, and it was with the help of the college, is to have licensees their final exam at the college, Brad, be their licensing exam, right? Because the way the system works now, you graduate with a degree, let's say in cosmetology.
Sure.
Then you ask the TDLR for permission to take the test. Okay, and there's an expense there, and that takes a month or two to get the background checks and the educational checks to make sure that you're qualified to take the exam. And then it takes another month or so to take the exam. So you graduate, and it takes 2 or 3 months to get licensed to work.
Yeah.
So I had an idea. Why can't the final exam at the community college be the licensing exam?
Sure.
It's one of these things. It's like, why didn't we ever think of this before? You know?
Yeah.
And I point the finger at myself more than anybody else because I was on the commission 12 years before I had this idea.
Yeah.
That's how smart I am, right? It took me 12 years to figure out the obvious.
Well, you still figured it out before anybody else. So,
and so in May, we graduated 300 kids in barber and cosmetology and massage at San Jacinto Community College here in Pasadena, Texas. And they were able to get to work the day they got their diploma.
Yeah.
Because their licensing exam was their final. And we even had the executive director of the TDLR be at the graduation ceremony. And there were tears. She was crying. The students were crying.
Yeah.
She was signing licenses and handing them their license to work. Now, just think about that. To shave off, 2 or 3 months of 300 kids, and that's just at one institution.
Yeah.
If we could do that Texas-wide and get kids to work 2 or 3 months faster, think of the impact that would have on our economy.
Sure.
And in the lives of those students. And a lot of those students are on scholarship, right? So waiting 2 months means a lot to them.
Yeah.
Because they're able to start paying their own way and helping their families out immediately upon graduation. So there's still a lot that we have to do. We've done it great. We've done it better than most states, but there's always room for improvement. And that little story I gave you is just one example of room for improvement. Now, that particular college has 14 different programs that would be eligible for this pilot program that we did. And so we're talking to other community colleges about it now. We're even talking to school districts, high school students that can graduate cosmetology or barbering and potentially even air conditioning or electrician. So just think about that little change in mindset. Think about the impact that could have in just everybody's life that was a part of these programs. So there's a lot that we still have to do. We've come a long way, but we have a lot further to go.
Yeah. So, steering it back to energy more specifically, the TDLR's role in that sounds like, making sure that the electricians and people that work in that field, whatever it is, that they have the expertise to do it and that they have the expertise to do it well. And I'm wondering, sort of, as far as the Texas energy goes into the future, there's obviously a lot of concerns about the data centers and AI and all of that stuff requiring so much energy. I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. How can we keep our electricity reliable, not only for families and their homes and businesses, retail outlets, whatever, but also those big data centers?
Yeah, that's a great question because so many of them are popping up. I'm aware of one in the Waco area that's, I think, 300 acres of a data center that's coming in with big companies coming, NVIDIA, Amazon, and just, like I said, big companies coming in. So I think that's a challenge for all of us. And I was with the commissioner of ERCOT 2 weeks ago, and that's a challenge that they're taking seriously. And so I have it here in my notes. In the next 20 years, our grid is going to have to be capable of 50% more electricity. And so I think we'd look at all possible solutions and what is realistic, right? And the most realistic right now is to continue what we're doing to increase that base load of energy in Texas. Natural gas. We need to look at coal again. We need to look at small nuclear. I'm of the belief that water and electricity are the limiting factors to the growth of Texas. And so we have to be forward looking and not be so scared of looking at all the options on the table
Yeah.
and what that could entail.
What is a small nuclear? What is that?
So these are it hasn't been defined yet,
Sure.
but we've started talking about it in the legislature. I think a couple of months ago they created the small nuclear caucus to start talking about what that looks like. I can tell you that there are um, uh, systems in being developed and that have been developed um, that could possibly generate electricity for a small community
Yeah.
or maybe even smaller, a data center like we're talking about, the 300 acres possibly that's coming online in Waco in the next year or two. So a small nuclear generation system just tailored for that specific development.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that looks like. I know that we have to start looking at other options and what's reasonable for our communities, what's reasonable for industry, and what's reasonable in terms of the technical training that our employees need to have to be ready for that.
Yeah. So a small nuclear reactor, just big enough to power that 300-acre data center and no more,
Mhm.
sounds very futuristic. And as a non-nuclear expert,
Mhm.
sounds pretty cool. I'm sure nuclear experts also think it's pretty cool. But
Yeah.
so in those large data centers, I know they're popping up in other places, and it's almost a new industry has been developed to sort of find those plots of land, get them ready for data centers, turn them around, flip them to sell to large companies to build the data center. Getting all of the permits and electricity is there. And I know that there's challenges in that industry, not only finding the permits, but also are getting the permits going through, but also the electricity, making sure there's enough electricity for not only in that scenario, the city of Waco, but
Mhm.
this new 300-acre data center, which, I don't know that this is true, but maybe it takes as much energy as the city of Waco or whatever, right? And maybe not that high, but it's a major increase.
Sure.
And how do you power that? And as far as the TDLR is concerned, that the construction requires workers, the electricians, if there's a small nuclear device there or whatever to power it, that needs certain type of skills and work. The data center itself, once it's up and running, does Texas have the expertise and the capacity to supply all of those jobs?
Yeah, I think because Texas is an energy hub,
Yeah.
right? And even more than just a specific type of energy, they are a hub in many different ways. Um, and some of the skill sets are not even being used. I'll tell you a funny story, Brad, is, I run a credit union. The manager of my mortgage department is a nuclear engineer.
Okay. Very cool.
So we talk at length about small nukes.
Sure.
Now he's a Naval Academy graduate, and his degree is truly rocket scientist. He's a rocket scientist. But when he graduated Naval Academy, they said, we don't need a rocket scientist today. We need a nuclear engineer. You're going on a sub. So you're now a nuclear engineer
Okay.
and you're going to power the sub. And so we have expertise that may not have the capacity to work in that industry yet because that industry is not at a place where it's mature enough.
Sure.
But you know, I'll always bet on Texans being able to rise to the challenge,
Yeah.
especially when energy is involved because it's so close and so dear to our independence as a free state, right?
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
and so in many ways we're not dependent on anybody else because we have the technical capabilities of creating and managing our own energy needs. And so what does that look like? I hope Texas will continue to be the leader in nuclear, whatever that, or energy, whatever that looks like. But like you're saying, um, if a data center is being built, they need water. That requires pipelines in many instances. You don't want to always drill down. Surface water is easier because subsidence issues, and water is becoming a more scarce quantity. If you pipe natural gas to an electrical generating facility, you have to build power lines, and that's when things start getting complicated. So the idea of generating electricity at the site, whatever that site might be, right, a data center in this instance is what we're talking about. Um, you know, some places are putting data centers where there used to be natural gas wells
Yeah.
because they still have some residual natural gas there. And so, in the legislature 2 years ago, uh, had inexpensive money for the development of some of those natural gas facilities. I think, in a way, to kind of help development in some of those rural areas. So there's a lot, there's a lot to look at there.
Yeah. I think it's wise to not bet against Texans, as you said. I think that's a smart move for sure. Um, However, I wonder if, from the TDLR's perspective, people move to Texas all the time because people are betting on Texas, right? And there's maybe someone brings a license from California or Idaho or New York or whatever,
Mhm.
and to work at this specific data center or another one. Is
Mhm.
there do y'all, as far as those licenses are concerned, do they cross state lines with them? Do they have to get new license here in Texas? Is there a grace
Sure.
period?
Sure. That it depends on the different type of licenses, and
Sure.
there is some reciprocity. But there is,
That's the word I was looking for. Reciprocity.
yeah, it's one of those nickel words, right? Um, we have within our agency a division that looks at that, and we have some standing agreements with different states as it is right now.
Yeah.
There are some states that meet our qualifications. This will not come as a surprise to you, Brad, but Texas, in many ways, is the leader, right, in many of these license programs, midwifery, electricians. Those are the first two that came to mind.
Sure.
Even boilers, right, which every plant probably in Texas has a boiler of some sort. They create steam to generate so much. I mean, whether it's electricity on site or to make sure that the plastics or the crude going through the pipelines doesn't harden
Yeah.
or gel. So the boilers are pervasive in almost every office building, in almost every commercial building, and definitely in the refineries and chemical plants. And so um, we as Texans look at our own industry and say these are the standards that we need. Oftentimes, because our industries are complex and complicated, and you want an electrician to be able to go. If he has a Texas license, to be able to go into a commercial building, an industrial application, or anything in between, even a nuclear or an electrical power plant,
Yeah.
and be able to truly be a journeyman and do whatever is needed there with some peace of mind. If you've hired a Texas licensed electrician, they're going to know what they're doing. So we it's something that we consider other states and what their qualifications are, but we as Texans have to set our own standards for our own people and our own industry. And even if it's just a home based electrician, you want if you call an electrician, you want to be able to say, I have some confidence that that person has been vetted to do what they need to do safely. And so we take all of that into consideration, but our primary concern is the safety of our own citizens, the safety of our industry. And so some states come up to that bar and meet us, and some states don't.
Yeah.
And some states have, you wouldn't believe this, but even our licensed behavioral therapists or psychologists, right? In some states, you just have a high school diploma
Yeah.
is all you need. But in Texas, we require a bachelor's degree and several hundreds hours of training underneath a licensed behavioral therapist. And so some states will never come up to our standards.
Yeah.
Some states do meet our standards, and if they do, we'll look at reciprocity. And so we take that individually on a license by license basis and an individual by individual basis.
Yeah. So, you know, going back to AI and AI dominance and the data centers and everything like that, that's obviously a big topic in the news, especially for national security. I know that the current administration has talked about it pretty extensively. I believe the last administration talked about it as well. I'm sure that the next several administrations, at least, will be talking about it. And Texas being sort of the energy hub of the United States, I think will play a big role for that. Um, what does that mean for, Texas blue collar jobs like electricians and everything like that? I can see there being, a lot of people fear that AI and, as that technology advances, advanced robotics and everything like that, maybe some of those blue collar jobs being wiped out in a way. Is that something that you guys have thought about pretty extensively?
It is, and that's something we've had extensive conversations with those that are in the educational world,
Sure.
training the electricians, the even the barbers and those sorts of things, the boilers, the air conditioning techs that we license. A lot of these jobs are not, or I think are resistant to AI,
Okay.
right? You have to go out sometimes and look at an air conditioner to figure out what's going on here
Yeah.
and see the frayed wire. How maybe there's just a little piece of plastic that has come off of the wire and it's making contact
Yeah.
with the frame of the air conditioner. Not saying that a robot couldn't figure that out, but how do you get a robot out there? How do you get a robot to manage the backyards of Texans?
Sure.
And so I
Can I
think
get a robot just to fold my clothes? That'd be nice.
I think a lot of these blue collar jobs, there is some job security here.
Sure.
It's hard to program a plumber, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to program an electrician or a boiler, or God help us, a midwife.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we license, I think, are safe in terms of AI. I don't think I do believe that AI will play some role in maybe the analysis of the instrumentation that they
Sure.
use and these sorts of things. And Texas is a great place to experiment with AI. Tesla, it has had AI in their vehicles for 10 years,
Yeah.
monitoring how people respond to different stimuli as they're driving. So Tesla's got a 10-year head start,
Yeah.
uh, and they've done that to a large extent in Texas. And so I was in Austin a couple of weeks ago. For the first time ever, I was in a driverless vehicle,
Yeah.
and that was interesting to me. One small hair raising incident, but other than that, it went well. It went well.
Sure.
So I think a lot of the jobs that the TDLR manages and oversees are safe, the short run and the medium run. Now, the long term, I guess all bets are off. It depends on how good it becomes,
Yeah.
but we have to be ready for whatever that looks like. Then,
Yeah, for sure. So, you just, as we wrap up here, you mentioned briefly before, the Texas energy demand. I think it's about 50% higher than previously predicted in the next 10 years or so, mostly due to data centers and AI. And I think that also includes the need for water is going to be much higher than we previously predicted. Are there steps that you can think of that Texas leaders, whether it be, representatives or senators or commission members or whatever, do you think there's any steps that they could take to maintain our energy momentum to make sure that we actually can successfully integrate those new industries into our Texas economy?
yeah, I think those conversations are already taking place. 1,600 people a day are still moving to Texas,
Yeah.
right? It's a massive population that is moving here, and I think a conversation needs to be had about how we get the resources that those households are going to need. Even if you took data centers out, 1,600 people a day move into the state, and that's an indication that we've done it well, right? We're in. I don't want to say we're a victim of our own success, but we're in. It depends on your perspective. If you think that's a good thing, then we're reaping the benefits of it.
Sure.
If you think it's a bad thing, then we're a victim of our own success. And so it is what it is, though. right? And so we have to face that reality, and that reality is going to require a lot of that conversation, Brad, that you're talking about is water. How do we get water to Texans? In East Texas, we have plenty of it. The hill country going west, they don't have as much.
Yeah.
So is that going to change the dynamics of the state where the east part of Texas is very well represented, and then half the state has no representation? That may end up being a problem down the road. And so we need to talk about how do we share some of the resources with our fellow Texans, and what the cost of sharing those resources is going to be. And those are delicate conversations that need to happen because you don't want to pit Texan against Texan.
Sure.
So we have those conversations now. We have reasonable solutions for everybody and fair and balanced solutions for everybody. And but those are conversations that need to be had. And a lot of times to develop housing, or these data centers that we're talking about, the data center is not as much. You have to have water infrastructure in place, but it comes from somewhere, and
Yeah.
it comes at the expense of someone else, unfortunately, because it is a limited supply now. And so you can build homes without getting a water permit of any kind, right? You connect to in cities, you just connect to the city water supply, um, and and all of a sudden, 5, 10 years go by, and you realize, holy smokes, we're slowly running out of water.
Yeah.
Those conversations are taking place. I don't know what the final solutions are going to look like, and I think it's going to be one of those iterative things where we have one solution, but we need better solutions, and then we'll need better solutions and better solutions. But we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
For sure. Well, I want to be respectful of your time here. Is there any final thoughts that you wanted to leave us with?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. I think you asked some great questions, and because they kind of impact the future of our state and where it's going. And we are reaping the rewards of the policies that have come before us.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that those freedoms are here for our kids and their kids as well. So Texas has been a beacon of freedom for a long time. And I think because we have kind of common sense way of approaching things, not a dogmatic way of approaching things. And so as long as it works for the little guy on the street, the guy with the least amount of power, as long as we can keep him on the forefront of our mind, him and her, I think we're going to do okay, because in the end, those are the people that reap the benefits or suffer the consequences of the decisions that we make as leaders.
Yeah. Well, Tom Butler, Vice Chair of the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Brad. It's great getting to know you.